Hello, welcome back. I'm Hannah, and this is another episode, I think the fourth episode, of reading the Book of Mormon. Again, for the fourth time, as an ex-Mormon. I've read the Book of Mormon 3 times in my 18 years of living, and we're reading it this time to kind of pick it apart and figure out why I thought the way I thought before and what I think about it now, kind of analyzing, kind of dissecting everything. So yeah, let's get into it. I think we're going to go over 3 chapters today. We're going to go over 1st Nephi 5, 6, and 7. Because, especially chapter 6 is like super short. But we have a lot to cover today, okay? We have a lot of things to say. So let me pull up my notes real fast and let's get into it. So if you remember from last time, Nephi and the whole gang just got the plates from Laban. And so in chapter 5, they return, and the parents, Lehi and Sariah, which is the mom, are very happy. Sariah is particularly relieved because she thought that her sons were going to die in the wilderness, and she was complaining to Lehi. She was like, "Bud, why'd you just send them out into the wilderness because you had some dream they're going to die?" Valid concern. And Lehi searches the records once they come back with it, and supposedly finds the Book of Moses, which was lost from the Bible. This is the Book of Moses is in a Book of Mormon doctrine or literature called the Pearl of Great Price, and essentially it lays out the Mormon doctrine about the creation of the earth. And I guess more specifically, like the pre-mortal existence, because Mormons believe that we lived before we got sent to Earth, and that we chose to come to Earth. I thought that this was funny reflecting over it because it actually contradicts the Bible, and a big thing in the Mormon religion is that the Book of Mormon and the Bible go hand in hand. They talk about it all the time. I remember there was like a general conference talk, general conference is like the worldwide meeting that is held twice a year, where the prophet and like the main leaders of the church speak. And this one talk had this analogy that the Bible by itself, so one dot, I really need like a whiteboard or something. One dot represents the Bible, and you can make a million lines through the one dot. It can go a million different directions. But with the Book of Mormon, so 2 dots, there's only one interpretation. So that's the argument about the Book of Mormon and the Bible, that together they make the truth. I just think it's funny because coming out of the religion, I've learned a lot of things about why the Book of Mormon and the Bible contradict. I was taught from an early age as well that the Book of Mormon is the most true book on earth. Even like nonfiction science literature, no, not as true as the Book of Mormon, which is funny considering that there isn't a DNA evidence that the people that are written about in the Book of Mormon even existed, and there's a lot of contradictions about like animals and items that it talks about in the Book of Mormon that didn't actually exist in that time period. So many things. In this chapter 5, so Lehi is finding about all these things in this record, and he also finds that he is a descendant of Joseph from the Bible, the guy that got sold into Egypt in the Bible. He finds that he's a descendant from Joseph, and this kind of sets up the lineages. Well, it's like one of the things that sets up the lineages in the Mormon religion. There's this idea that you are from one of the 12 tribes of Israel. So, for example, and okay, you know what tribe you're from, not because of like what tribe your parents are from, but you get this thing called a patriarchal blessing, which when you can get it essentially anytime, but usually people get it in their like late teens. So I got it I was 15 or 16. Um, and it kind of tells you a lot of things. It tells you what tribe you're from, and it tells you, like, it's basically manifestations of what is going to happen, happen in your life if you are righteous. So, in my patriarchal blessing, I was assigned the tribe of Ephraim. So, yeah. And I'll talk about patriarchal blessings probably later. I don't want to get into depth now. But, anyway. So, those are kind of my thoughts with chapter 5. Not a lot. I didn't have a lot of notes in my journal. In case you don't know, this is my journal Book of Mormon, so it has space to write on the sides, and as you can see, I don't have a lot of notes for this one. I do have a note on every page though, because Mormon Me had a goal to have a note on every page. So there is a note on every page, but there wasn't anything that I wanted to talk about in particular. So, moving on to chapter 6, I don't have anything to say for chapter 6, but if you do want to know what happens, basically Nephi lays out his intentions to write the words of God in the following chapters. That's what is happening in chapter 6. So, moving on, chapter 7. Before I get into my notes, because I do have some things to say, I'm just going to lay out what happens in chapter 7. It's kind of a lot. We got a lot going on. So basically, Lehi, the father, wants his sons to get wives. So the sons are Nephi, Sam, Laman, and Lemuel. He wants them to get wives. So they meet up with this guy, Ishmael, and they take his daughters and they get wives. Basically, they're going on the journey, right? And Laman, Lemuel, and Co., the wives and everybody, are complaining, and Nephi is like, how could you complain? You should be setting the example because you're older than me, and I'm younger than you, but I'm always setting the example for you. And so Laman and Lemuel get mad at Nephi, and they tie him up. And Nephi prays to God, and the ropes are loosed. Okay, that's what happens in Nephi chapter 7. Moving on to what I think about it. So I guess the first thought that I had right away was just from verse 1. Verse 1 basically lays out the idea that Lehi wants his sons to get wives, right? And it just reminded me of how women are just treated like possessions a lot of times in the Book of Mormon and the Bible, and they're not really treated as significant people. I actually just want to go on a rant about the patriarchy for a second. So I left the church for many reasons, and the patriarchy actually wasn't one of the reasons, but now getting out of it, I see the patriarchy in the Mormon church a lot. Whether that's just a bishop can't be a woman, that's kind of typical with Christianity too, the pastor isn't a woman, or the man is the head of the household, and it kind of the connection to God goes God, man, wife, and how the prophets and the apostles in the church are predominantly all men, and there's three really big women leaders in the church, and the rest of them are just men. How you can't talk to Heavenly Mother. A big thing, I guess maybe not a big thing, but a part of the Mormon religion is that they believe in a Heavenly Mother, except for you can't talk about her, and you're not allowed to pray to her. I wish I would have written more notes about things I have to say for the patriarchy, because there's a lot, but we can probably just make a separate video about it. Moving on to verse 12. Verse 12 says this: Yea, and how is it that ye have forgotten that the Lord is able to do all things according to his will, for the children of men, if it be so that they exercise faith in him? I was just thinking about the idea that the Lord is able to do all things, and how that doesn't reflect in the way that I would like to in the world. And what I mean by that is that if the Lord is able to do all things, then why do bad things happen? I know that's a common argument, and what people in the church will say, or people in Christianity in general will say, is, well, people are sinful, and they're free to make their own choices, and people often make bad choices, and so that is why bad things happen. And while that accounts for some things, it doesn't account for tragic things, like a kid who happens to get cancer. And I'm not agreeing with the argument that, oh, well, their parents must have done something, and so, like, their generations are cursed. Like, what? No, I'm not getting on board with that. So it doesn't account for just natural disasters. So if God can do all things, and He loves us and wants the best for us, why do these tragic things happen? And another argument people in religion use is to make us stronger. But that only makes sense to a point. If a child dies at 7 years old because he had cancer, I'm not supporting the argument that was to strengthen the child or strengthen the family members. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. It just kind of rubbed me off the wrong way that a person's purpose in life could be to die, and that's like God's purpose for them. Don't like that. No me gusta. No thank you. So, anyway, went off on that longer than I expected. We're going to move to verses 17 and 18. Yeah. Okay. I also did some adjusting. I was getting uncomfortable. Fun fact, the other day at rugby we did this leg workout, and then the next day I decided I was going to hit legs at the gym, and so my butt is sore. Not even going to lie to you. Like, I put on Birks to walk over here because I tried to put on tennis shoes and I couldn't lift my foot up. So I'm feeling kind of out of it. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so in 17 and 18 is when Nephi is bound by the ropes that his brothers put him in, and he prays to God and he gets loosed. He gets loosed? I don't know if that makes any sense. And my note is, I love that God loosed the bands. Nephi didn't need to be strong in this situation. This is significant to me because it doesn't follow my experience. Let me explain further. Having this safety to be able to be weak was not my experience. Basically, I found that in the church I always had to be strong and then give the credit to God for what was actually my own strength. And it wasn't even strength all the time. I just told myself that it was strength. A lot of times it was just me pushing down my emotions because I didn't want to cry in front of other people. And so a lot of how I was raised was kind of to people please and to be like hyper aware of the emotions in the room and be the peacemaker, if you will, or even like the therapist friend, like to be the advice friend, or the friend who always has it all figured out or whatever. And I was praised for this kind of thing. I was praised because it always seemed like my spiritual strength was better than everybody else's, if you will. But in reality, I was just putting myself down and presenting this mask. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was doing it for other people, and I was doing it for the church because I was scared. And I realize now that putting myself down is not humility. it's devaluing myself, and it's learned invisibility is what it is. But and so now I have a really hard time expressing emotions. Like, honestly, I forgot how to cry. I don't, crying's not really a thing that comes naturally to me, even when I can feel that like my body needs it or wants it. I'm got so used to just pressing it down that I don't know how to anymore. So, trauma dump. Anyways, the last thing I wanted to go over was verse 21. So in verse 21, Nephi had already been loosed. God loosed the bands, and then he forgives his brothers for loosing the bands. And I wrote down, I love that Nephi forgave so easily, and not only did he forgive, but encouraged them to seek refuge with the Father. So the thing I wanted to talk about with this is I feel like I was taught to forgive too much. And I'm already a naturally, I think, a naturally forgiving and trusting person anyways. And so what happened, especially in high school, is I let people walk over me a lot and use me. And I kind of had the philosophy of, oh, I'm just going to cross oceans for people. I'm not going to expect anything in return. And I didn't get anything in return. And so I had a lot of periods of feeling very down and very used, and I resented a lot of my relationships because of it, because I didn't have any boundaries. And I could go off on like a million different things about this, but let's just keep it at that for now. Video's already getting a little long, a little lengthy, so catch you guys on the flip side, I guess. Next episode, which I was gonna record right now, but I really need a whiteboard because I got some things I gotta lay out for y'all. We're gonna go over Lehi's dream in the next episode, so buckle up for that. I don't know when I'm gonna post it, as soon as possible. I really need to get better and do these things faster. So that'll be something I'm gonna work on. Bye.